Someone has come into my office to sit down for a first experience with me. I don't know them, and they say, here's the deal. I have to get out of ministry. And so I think I have two choices to get out. I can either have an affair or I can steal money from the church. And one or the other is going to get me fired, and then I'll have to do something else.
So I say this, one was my fleshly side, but on the other side of it was I had been doing my work, been performing. And so we had hired a new worship minister to come in, and apparently he was going to be the saving grace of growing the church again. Yet there's a decision to pay this worship minister more than I was making. So that hurt a lot. Well, when this event happened, and I felt like I was doing my part to lead in ministry, small groups, all these things, I thought my part was going well. There was always room for improvement. I was just told no. So after one or two other confrontations, what I was trying to resolve is conflict with this leader. I was like, I just don't see a way out.
I was on staff here when I became aware that my husband was having an affair with someone here in the church. We had the greatest chance of him being able to walk into this church and sit down in our usual pew as a married couple, the less people who knew. That's what I told myself. And so I told no one.
Here's what they said. They said, I don't talk to anyone. I talk to my dog or I talk to my pillow after my spouse is asleep because no one wants to hear what it's actually like to be me.
I think the red flags start showing up at home before they show up anywhere else. That's something I've had to learn the hard way, where I start realizing one day that, man, I'm being short with the kids. I'm not, just my tone, the way I'm talking, my level of energy when I'm with my family is at a different place.
The majority of ministers come to me when they've reached the point of they can identify that they're burned out. And the causes that they inevitably point to are expectations that they can't meet in their role, meaning they're working 60, 70, 80 hours a week and they're still not able to meet the demands that have been placed on them.
So it was a lot of just me battling the flesh of like, God, in the scripture, you tell us that you'll give us bread. And my wife has been very clear on praying for very warm bread. Like for 18 months, we didn't know where that bread was. But I'm not one for complacency. I don't want to take the easy route. So when I asked an elder in that December, 6 months had passed, I was like, dude, I've just got to move on. And it was one of my wife's and I's biggest fights to date. Not because she didn't agree, she knew it was time to move on, but she wanted a plan. She's like, just get a plan, Lance. She's like, I'll support you. And my plan was to walk out Hebrews 11:6. I had no idea what that scripture meant to be lived out. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. But he rewards those who faithfully seek him.
We published an article on our website that a board member wrote about a colleague of hers who had committed suicide. So we published the article as a way of saying, this is real, what we're talking about, this work. Within 24 hours, I had 17 ministers contact me personally, just me personally, to say, I have either contemplated suicide, I am currently contemplating suicide, or I know someone who has committed suicide in ministry.
So asking for help becomes very unique because, yes, you can reach out to elders, you can reach out to staff, but if it's not heard and if it's not received, then you've got to try to find somewhere else to go. And once you go there and you realize, oh, we don't have that type of relationship, then it becomes really a struggle.
Several years ago at a previous church I was a part of, we went through a big shift in our church. When I got there, it was a church of about 750. I was 24 years old, and my naive assumption was I bring my sermons and this will double in size and everything will go well, right? And we walked through a transition when it came to gender roles in our church. In a period of about a month in that church, we lost 200 people. A lot of it, I felt like it reflected on me and my failure in that. If you're preaching for some kind of thing that you need from your congregation, if you're preaching for the blessing rather than from the blessing, it's going to go really bad.
There was a moment a few years ago in my ministry when there was just a lot of transition in our church and in my life. I was was getting closer to 40 and things were happening at our church where we had some turnover in staff and just it seemed to be kind of a tumultuous time in the life of our church. We've had those, at moments. And it was in the midst of that probably lasted about a year. Somewhere in the middle of that, I realized I was not in a good place. I was in a place where I needed voices. I needed somebody to walk alongside me and start pointing out, hey, you're not paying attention enough to how much you're doing.
It's really hard to figure out how to manage this role that they're in of you are a minister's boss in most settings, but you're also their only shot at being shepherded.
Sometimes we walk into a new relationship forgetting that previous relationships have a bearing, and that wounding causes us to respond in certain ways to things that aren't meant that way. What's that past? What's that scar tissue that this particular minister has? What may be behind this? What may be at stake that we don't see? That sometimes it's easy to get caught up in the anxiety of the situation at hand and not realize that in the middle of it, we wound real people.
What would surprise most shepherds is that it's real simple. They want to be seen as a person.
Spend the time with each minister to fully understand what they do. It rings hollow when someone says, I don't know what you do, but thank you for doing it. But it would mean a whole lot if they understood, if they took the time to get to know the ministers as people.
They want you as their shepherd to recognize that they live in this tension of my work life and my social life and my spiritual life are all in one place. And for you to acknowledge, man, I experienced some of that tension too. So how are we going to learn to manage that tension better together?